Welcome to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, the podcast for high achievers who want to stay sharp, focused, and full of energy despite their diagnosis. With your host, National Board Certified Functional Medicine Health Coach, Julie Michelson, where Julie helps you take your power back from autoimmunity. And now here's your host, Julie Michelson.
Welcome back to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast. I'm your host, Julie Michelson. Monica Cox joins us in today's episode. Monica is an infertility warrior and holistic functional fertility coach. She's the best-selling author of Boost Your Embryos and the host of the Finding Fertility podcast. Our conversation today is about the link between autoimmunity and fertility. Monica knows that the body is a healing machine, and she shares her experience and wisdom with us. From mindset to intuition, we dive in to explore the powerful tools to improve your health in a way that doesn't feel hard. Monica, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
We are thrilled to have you, and this is such an important topic. So I'm really excited to dive in, and I would love to have listeners learn more about you and love to find out about your story. Usually I ask, well, how'd you get to be doing what you're doing? But even better is, let's talk about, since we'll be talking about the connection of fertility struggles and autoimmunity, how did you find out you had autoimmunity? I think I know the answer, but I would love to hear that part of your journey and how it led you to what you're doing now.
Yeah, so infertility exposed my very, very silent autoimmune issue. I wasn't presenting like a classic autoimmune person per se with kind of big issues. And that kind of was a big issue for many doctors, right? Because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for these big issues. They're looking for these big markers in their tests. And I didn't have any of it. I just had the normal and common stuff. Like I had IBS and I had like constipation, diarrhea. I had the bloating, the brain fog, the joint pain, the PMS, the discharge, like the common stuff. And it was the fact that I could not get pregnant, even with the assistance of IVF, that sent me on this path of discovery. And luckily, there was a doctor, Dr. Beard. He has a book called The Better Baby Book, or no, Is Your Body? That's Dave Asbury's book.
I was going to say, I know that book.
Is Your Body? Yeah, no, that's the wrong book. Is Your Body Baby Friendly? And he comes from it with a very Western approach, but he was talking about autoimmune issues and blood type issues and all these like crazy things like this is impacting fertility. So that book sent me on the path to work with a clinic that was doing the controversial testing at the time. And I went on a health journey between IVF-1 and IVF-2, and improvements were insane. Like you could not fault me. I was like almost a picture of perfect health. That we got better embryos, but I didn't even make it to day 28 in that cycle. And then that's when we demanded the testing, because we actually got talked out of it, because once again, I wasn't presenting with normal issues. I wasn't having reoccurring miscarriages. I was so unhealthy, I just couldn't get pregnant. Like it was bad. And so that's what led me to find out that I had high natural killer cells, which is an autoimmune issue directly stemming from the gut. And I was just very fortunate that the paleo mom at the time had a blog. I mean, it was her raw original blog, and I just consumed, like her book wasn't even out yet. And I just consumed like all her material. And then that's when I found out that I was highly, highly intolerant to tomatoes, paprika, like all the nightshades, all the good stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the cliff notes.
Wow. So amazing. And there's so many pieces of that I want to touch on. Um, what you're calling all the regular stuff shouldn't be regular stuff. First of all, like IBS is a thing. Bloating is a problem. Brain fog is, serious, and you're young, you shouldn't have joint pain. Like all these things that get pushed aside often, even when you're begging for answers. I just, but this is why we're here having this conversation, because, like you found Paleo Mom. I love that you brought up Dave Asprey's book, because he was my entry into wellness after over a decade of decline. And so, and the nightshade thing is, I remember asking my rheumatologist, I heard about, nightshades can be a problem for people with RA. And I really trusted her and valued her opinion. And she just totally poo-pooed it. She was like, that's like 1 in 2 million people. And the interesting thing is, and this is totally an aside, and I'm curious what you see in your work. I have yet to find anybody who's nightshade sensitive that isn't already diagnosed or doesn't have at least symptoms of autoimmunity. Like I just, I do food sensitivity testing with autoimmune clients and non-autoimmune clients. And, numbers are really high in the autoimmune world that if not all nightshades, at least some nightshades are a problem. And it's like almost nobody else has nightshade sensitivity. There's some kind of interesting overlap there.
Yeah, you know what? I was just talking about this at dinner last night with a friend, and she was just interested she's actually trying to conceive her second child, so she was picking my brain. And it obviously has to be within the genetics of the person, right, to develop this type of autoimmune issue. They're genetically prone to it. But I also believe that for many of us of a certain age, that we just had decades of abuse to our body.
Yeah.
And we probably fell off our cliff. I know I fell off my cliff in my teens, looking back. And and you just keep going. Like a whole nother decade, before you start looking into these things. And the body's amazing. Like my tagline is, your body's a healing machine. And if you weren't, you'd be effing dead, right? Like your body's amazing to keep you alive as you beat it up. So I think it's like, there's got to be something genetic. And with the lectins in, those nightshades, I think it's just a big enough issue to just keep pushing us, right? It's that the body, or the food's natural defense to, the little creatures out there. And it just messes us up. But yeah, I just think it's like a genetic thing, and then decades of just poor management.
Yeah, and to be fair, it's not just nightshades. I'm guessing the only change,
No.
you didn't just stop eating nightshades and all of a sudden everything was 100% better. Like you said, it's decades. It's the foods, the stressors, the toxins, you name it, that we all have. And
yeah, nightshades was the last thing I took away, because it wasn't, because
they're healthy.
Autoimmune paleo is like, yeah, they're buzzing. This word is buzzing, right? Like people kind of know of it, like, oh, I've heard of that. Where probably when we were discovering it, people were like, you are loopy. You have gone insane if you think a tomato is messing you up. And I was like, well, my butt tells me different, so I'm listening to my butt, not you.
I love that. And that's exactly why in my practice, we do elimination diets so that we can feel what, I joke, I'm like, just because Julie says if you have autoimmunity, you shouldn't eat gluten, that's not going to keep you from eating gluten in 3 years. Like, that's not happening. You need to really get to a place where your inflammation's down enough to feel, doing proper reintroductions, which body parts are affected in what ways by what foods. So I
Yeah,
love that.
exactly. And, I saw this young girl on TikTok, and she's kind of like, her posts have gone, got some traction, and she's gone autoimmune paleo because she had some big issues, and she's done it for a month and she looks great. I'm super excited for her that she's on this path, but she's saying things like wrongly, leading people to believe that it's like this magic diet, right? And she's like, well, when you go AIP, your body detoxes. And it's like, well, no, your body's detoxing all the time. You've just eliminated all this inflammation, whether or not you needed it, right? Whether or not you are intolerant to lectins, dairy, like it's so strict. You have literally, eliminated all that. But don't lead people to believe that this is the magic trick, that you do it for a month, it's super easy, it's going to change your life. Like, one, we want to know if this is a long-term thing for you,
right?
Or if it can be a short-term thing for you, because it's so restrictive. We don't want people on it for long-term because of your gut microbiome. We want to introduce as much as possible back in.
Say it again. We want you eating the most varied diet that supports your body, period. And that is, I'm so glad you mentioned that. It's I think the biggest misconception of AIP is that people take that elimination phase as like a lifetime diet, and that's not how it's designed. And autoimmune paleo is not just about food. It's a lifestyle that incorporates all those other areas I mentioned earlier, because many of us I feel so fortunate, especially, the more people I work with that have, other underlying issues where the food alone isn't moving the needle for them, which is shocking when you something really restrictive.
Yes.
And so
yes, 100%.
I feel so grateful that when I had no idea what I was doing and I was experimenting on my own, that I started to get traction with diet change enough to kind of clear the brain fog so I could learn more, and led me to where I am now. And so I love that you said that. Yeah, it is. And it's not, I mentioned I do food sensitivity panels. AIP is a structure. It's a framework. It's not this like, oh, follow these directions and you're healed. No, it doesn't. There is no one size fits all.
Yeah. And like you said, it's a lifestyle. I've been doing it for almost 10 years now. And I have been able to reintroduce some foods, and I'm still really highly intolerant to tomatoes and paprika. Those seem to be like the kickers for me. So yeah, and like you say, you get to that level of health, like even if it's not like the peak, right? But it's like way better than where you were. All the inconvenience that AIP is, like, it doesn't matter anymore. Because once you start letting yourself slip, because you will, right? Like you have these peaks and troughs of your journey. You're like, you get to the point where you're like, no, not worth it. That bowl of salsa is not worth it, right? Or even like for me with gluten, like I'm not gluten, I'm gluten sensitive, but really I'm gluten sensitive to the really crappy gluten, right? Like I can eat a beautiful sourdough, traditionally fermented loaf and not feel any issues. You give me one slice of like whatever, even like some of the organic breads on the shelf, and I'm like, nah, can't do this. So it's not really necessarily the gluten, it's all the other crap that's surrounded in our food system that is causing the issues.
Absolutely true. And that is the beauty of, that's where it is individualized, right? So for me, gluten is a never, ever, 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 ever. No, I don't care who made it, how traditionally, not going there ever again. Won't happen. But
Yeah.
I allow myself a couple times a year, some tomatoes. And I'm waiting because we have some in the garden and I'm like, one of these days. But even that, it's like, I feel so good. I can sneak them in. If I have them once, I don't feel anything. But if I have them 2 days in a row, I definitely notice. Nothing, for me like gluten, but they're not certainly not a staple. So they're a rare, and I wouldn't even say sometimes, they're a special treat.
Yeah.
Is tomatoes. So it is, and that's I'm all about empowerment, as I know you are, and that's where the power is. When we know, we get to make those decisions for ourselves. And like you said, when we're feeling so good, I say it all the time. For years I've been saying, I can't believe how well I feel. And then I look over my shoulder and I'm like, wow, I feel even better than I did 6 months ago. And I thought I was at the peak. And so that's the motivator right there. I don't think of how I eat as restrictive. I just don't.
Yeah.
And it takes a while for sure to get there. And sometimes it depends on, where we were in the struggle and how good, what kind of results. And that's where sometimes, if someone's just using food to heal, that's not the whole picture.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, mindset is like shoulder to shoulder with diet, right? Like if you don't, well, I put it like this. Obviously, if you're not sticking to your physical commitments, which is one is diet, right? It's a physical thing. You have to get real with yourself and understand why. Because taking care of yourself, like once you have this knowledge, you know that A, B, and C will dramatically help you physically. Why can't you commit to that? And for most people, it's either self-love or self-worth.
Yeah.
And so tapping into that mental and emotional side of like, well, where did I lose that? And for all of us, once again, it's it's a very individual process. But you got to get real, right? Like I sit across from a friend who knows that gluten thing does not serve her, but she eats it and then she feels guilty. And I keep telling her, I was like, it's your subconscious beliefs and you got to tap into that stuff because it's just, you're gonna just keep cycling and then the guilt gets more. So once you're able to, and this is I personally feel this is the hardest part, right?
Yes.
Diet is I don't want to say easy, but you can get rid of the temptations. You can you can control your environment. But at night during the day and you're sat there with yourself and your thoughts, no one there to protect you, it's hard. So it's really, I think one of the hacks that I wish I would have had earlier in my life was just repeating to yourself what you want to be. Right. So I recently did this with alcohol. I thought I didn't have a problem. I did have a problem. I come from a line of alcoholics. So I was a functioning alcoholic and obviously
Probably
kicked
a
it when I was going through infertility. Yeah. I thought oh, I've quit for so many years. I'm not going to get back into it. And then the stress of being a mom and all those little things, it crept its way back in. And not bad, because my body can't handle that stuff anymore. So I wasn't going on knocked out, but even 1 or 2 drinks, 3 or 4 times a week, it was just too much for my body. And I was feeling the physical impact of it again. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to put pressure on myself to stop this. I know that I don't want to do this. I know it doesn't serve me. So every day that I had a drink, I went to bed and I told myself, tomorrow I'm not going to drink. I'm not someone who needs alcohol to enjoy myself, to relax. I'm not a drinker. And that's all I said to myself, knowing I was going to drink the next day. Right. But I was consistent with that message to my subconscious mind of who I wanted to be. And so even though I wasn't necessarily physically being that person yet, I was putting into my subconscious mind that I was that person. So March of this year, like mid-March, I woke up and I was like, all right, April 1st, new moon, new me, we're starting this. And yeah, I haven't had a drink since, and it's been super easy. And it hasn't been, the temptation is real when you have a connection to food or drink or even shopping or, whatever your vice is, whatever your thing is. But it doesn't have to be hard to give that up. You just have to convince your subconscious mind that you're not that person anymore and that you're worthy to take care of yourself, that you love yourself enough. That's a form of love, to take care of yourself, to show up for yourself every day.
Yeah. And congratulations. Well done. And that so beautifully illustrates the things that it is a hack. It's a beautiful hack, and it's essential. It's something that can speed healing up. You laid the groundwork. When I first learned what I'm about to say, I was like, what? But the body hears every thought we have, whether it's true or not. And it can take years to unwind all those stories and patterns, and we all should do that work. But I say, in the meantime, let's tip the scales. Let's give it what we want it to hear, whether it's true, whether we believe it. It just starts to get our body ready and our subconscious mind ready to be that person, to step in. So whether it's health or a vice, even I love that you said it's true. Everybody thinks they're so unique that they have these emotional connections to food. We all grew up eating like that. We all like, and most of it, it's interesting. I have yet to meet one person that's like, oh, but when I eat that salad, it brings up the best memories of my mom. Like, no, that's not right. I don't know why, hopefully the next generation will have that. Your kids, my kids, maybe will have some of those connections. But we can change those stories. Yes, we understand that. And there's ways to recreate those positive feelings in a way that serves our body and shows ourselves love, true love. So what a beautiful.
Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing. And I had no idea we were going there. And this is where I've evolved to. Is I used to start everybody with diet, right? Low hanging fruit. It's easy. We all know it drives inflammation. We've got to fix it. And we'd get to mindset. And now I do it the other way. It's like, no. Let's set this up for you to get results quicker. And I too feel like if I had known that hack years ago, it wouldn't have taken me so long to heal.
Long. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think too, like my journey on the mental and emotional, spiritual woo-woo path is that we've all been set up that everything has to be hard, right? Like
painful.
It's like the healing journey is hard and like you're gonna struggle. And I'm really finding these little hacks of like, and releasing that story as well.
Yes.
Like, no, this can be easy. Before I really got into mindset work during my fertility journey, all I changed up was one word, and I started saying when I get pregnant, not if I get pregnant.
Yes.
So it doesn't have to be these long meditations, which are very helpful and useful. yoga 20 times a week, you know, like we kind of start beating ourselves up that we're not doing all these things perfectly. But if you literally just start talking to yourself in a different tone, and when you catch yourself, you know, in your head overthinking things or doubting yourself or any of that, you just start changing the conversation. You just catch yourself and just go, no, we're not having that conversation. One thing I heard the other day, which is going to radically change my life, and I'm going to share it with you guys, is like, right, it's all about imagination. So you imagine your life the way you want, right? Your mindset, you're being the person, be, do, have. And when you have doubts, this is what I say to myself now, there can be no other way. You've already decided that that's what you're going to be. So there's no other way. And then that just dramatically stops that train of negative thought, or like, I can't do it, or it's never going to happen for me. It's like, no, you've already created it. You've already put it out into the future. There's no other way. Keep going with the physical commitments that you need to make it happen.
Well, we're done. That was just gold. Everybody should just go out and heal now. It was beautiful. And I want to actually circle all the way back to, because I see this all the time. So I want to highlight that, you know, healing doesn't have to be hard. For me, you know, for you, I'm guessing what was hard was not being able to conceive that child. For me, what was hard was I didn't think I would live to see my kids reach adulthood. Right. So that stuff's hard. Like, that's actually hard.
Yeah.
Not this idea of, and I think probably all of us, not almost all of us, will have people in our lives who mean well, who are going to try to put that story on you. It's so hard. How do you give up the bread? How do you not eat tomatoes? It's so hard. I'm from New Jersey, the best tomatoes anywhere, you know, like, yeah, I love tomatoes. It's fine. I actually love being physically able to enjoy my life, spend time with my adult children, you know, take care of my horse, do the things, right? Live fully. So I love that you highlighted that, and that you also said we don't need to, although yes, it could be amazing to do 20 hours of yoga a week, or sit in, you know, meditation and contemplation, and it's you don't get there that way. It's those little steps, right? So I love that you were like, change the one word. Stop saying if, say when. Like, literally, that alone right there is life changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it does. I don't want to like downplay where probably most people listening to this podcast are, because we both have walked through that fire of hell several times.
Yeah.
But just keep that hope. I know there's been a few good books that I've read about how hope is the driver of change, right? So if you hold on to that hope of a better future, better health, getting pregnant, whatever that is, you will stick to your commitments.
Yes.
Right.
And if you're at a place where you're not even sure it's possible, that's where you take that gold Monica gave you, make yourself that statement, I can heal, or whatever it is that you need to believe first, and just start there, create that reality for yourself. Because so many of us were told for so long we couldn't, right?
Yeah.
So,
and that message is still out there. You are going to get people thinking that you are crazy, loopy, diet doesn't matter, mindset doesn't matter, people are just trying to make money off of you, like all that stuff. And this is a big part of my practice too, is intuition. I think that we can all look back at our lives and see where we did and we didn't follow our intuitions, and where that led us. And every time I didn't follow my intuition, it cost me time, money, and a lot of heartache. And it was because, well, I'm not the expert, or they know, or I don't want to be judged, or any of that. So I think when people really start trusting themselves, especially women, like, your path is going to be unstoppable.
Unstoppable. I love that. And it's so true. It's something that for most of us, we need to relearn, right? We need to learn to listen. And we all have intuition. And what came up for me when you were giving the reasons why we sometimes don't listen or didn't used to, there's not logic. Like, like the brain jumps in and it's like, that doesn't make logical sense. And it's always the right move. So listen to your gut. Haha.
Or like, you're not smart enough to know that. Like for me, I'm not medically trained. I'm a creative. Like I love dance and photography and drawing and stuff. So when it came time to all this scientific stuff, I was so out of my depth. And for a long time, I didn't have the confidence in myself to know, like, no, this is what's going on. Don't tell me differently. I know, but I didn't feel I was smart enough. Like, who am I to know this stuff? It's like, now I'm like.
Yeah, especially in our field, right? We're helping people with wellness and we're not doctors. And I remember when I was going to trademark RA the right way and like really, actually, I think it was when I was trademarking Inspired Living with Autoimmunity. And I went to my guy who happens to be a functional medicine doctor. And I was like, I don't, who am I? Like, I don't know. Like, and he just looked at me and he was like, who knows RA better than you do?
Yeah.
He's like, I don't have it. I never lived it. Yeah. I went to medical school. So what? Like, and so we all have to do that work to shed, all those those are stories that we can change and get rid of. And, does it push us? Yes. I think I will always continue to learn, and I know you're doing the same. We were talking about it before we were recording, right? Always learning, always growing. And people have asked me, what is your most effective coaching tool? It's my intuition. It's not anything I learned in any of my training programs. It's not what I've learned about functional medicine. It's when a client says something to me that they think they're saying in passing and I get goosebumps all over my body. I'm like, oh, we need to go there. This is really important. And so I would say, there isn't also an art. You are an artist. There's an art to what you do.
Yeah, 100%.
For sure. So for people that are listening that are like, maybe they want to start a family and they know they have autoimmunity, or maybe they had fertility struggles and didn't connect those dots. Where can people start that either they're maybe connecting dots like, oh, I've struggled with fertility and didn't realize there was a connection, or they're thinking of getting ready to start a family and they know they have autoimmunity. What's a good start?
Well, if they're here listening to this, you've already started. Really, we don't fix fertility. A fertility health coach, especially when they're taking a holistic and a functional approach, it's not your lady Brits that are out of whack, right? Those things don't run on their own. We are helping you get down to the root cause, and we want to know the root cause of your autoimmune issue. So obviously with a lot of immune issues, it is the gut. We focus a lot on the gut, healing the gut lining, restoring the gut microbiome. And then it is, like we've been talking about, the mental and emotional side of it all. Sometimes people with autoimmune issues are just devastated because you're like, I have to live a certain way for the rest of my life just to even maintain a level of health that so many people take granted for. So it's really helping them through that. Obviously, when you are dealing with fertility issues, it's like, why is it so easy for my sister, my cousin, the crackhead on the street?
Everybody's pregnant.
Why me? So it's just really focusing on that mental and emotional health. So you've already started, and just keep going and just get the right support. I mean, I think that's the key to anyone's healing, that get in a community, get with a coach that you relate to, So if you are dealing with fertility issues, hook up with someone like myself who has had fertility issues, has done IVF, has walked the path and learned the knowledge at the same time, right? If you're dealing with a specific autoimmune issue, go connect with a coach that gets that, like yourself, like you know the pains, you know the struggles that the doctors can't relate, right? They just can't. Even functional medicine doctors, if they haven't walked that path. And I think that's where the magic lies. It's this like unseen layer where the knowledge, the expertise, and the experience meet, that gives the person in the healing phase just that extra support that they wouldn't get in other places.
I totally agree. There's this just amazing feeling of being understood. Somebody gets it and can guide them, is amazing. I would say I don't usually answer my own questions, but I think step one would be to check out your amazing podcast. If you're somebody who's contemplating starting a family or you're already there, I think for sure check out Finding Fertility. Monica is such an amazing resource, and she's got programs and community. Again, community is such a part of healing, which doesn't mean you have to. Not everybody loves group coaching. That doesn't, you don't have to do group coaching, but just, autoimmunity can be lonely. Any chronic illness can be lonely. Struggling with fertility can be lonely. And so find your people.
Yeah. And because I've reached a place where honesty is the best policy, I trigger a lot of people who are holding on to the victim card. And it's not a bad thing. I'm not judging, but just know that if you're following someone and you keep getting triggered, it's a very good place to start looking at why that is triggering you. Because a lot of people think like, well, it's easy for you to say that now. And it's kind of like, well, I guess it's easy in this moment, me sitting right here, but my almost 6-year journey of never seeing a positive pregnancy test was like really hard. And that's what brought me here. So I'm here to help you like make your journey dramatically less chaotic than mine, as expensive as mine, as long as mine was. And just really connect with someone who, if you're in that place of victimhood, not necessarily leave it, get the support that you need, because sometimes that place is an important place to reside, but just have in the back of your head that like, you can either, you can be a player in the game. You don't have to sit on the sideline or sit in that negative circle of like, woe's me, my life is so bad, right? And I don't think anyone listening to this podcast is there. So
no, and I think we have moments, right? We all have moments, but I'm a straight shooter too. I already mentioned I'm from New Jersey. I have no filter. And I call it like I see it. And some people get very comfortable in victimhood. And that's not where change happens. So if you actually are looking for healing, improvement, a baby, fill in the blank, it's okay to visit. We can all visit, but then you need to take a step out of that place and like you said, look inward and change one thing. Start with one little simple thing, and like you said, maybe change who you're hanging around if they're encouraging that. There's a Jim Rohn quote that I love, and it's geared toward more like entrepreneurial business, but it's the same for health. You are the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so you might need to change your community, maybe not all at once, but find those people to connect with that are a little bit further down the path than you, or like Monica is, or I am, maybe a lot further.
Yeah, that's so important, because you can come back, like having these community areas, for a lot of people, they won't have anyone in their life that gets it, right? Ever.
Yeah.
And being able to pop into those communities where you can express and vent and get the knowledge and get the empowerment actually helps you survive those communities that you can't leave.
Right.
Right. Like I still
Yeah.
have family members, like I got pregnant naturally. I proved it, right? Like I've studied my ass
Works.
off. Like I have the proof.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, I just don't think, I think IVF taught your body how to get pregnant. And I'm like, okay,
Okay.
peace be with you. Yeah, good.
Yeah.
So just find your tribe for sure.
Yeah. And like you said, I love that it doesn't mean we're getting, yeah, it would be amazing. We call that that's a social detox. But
Yes.
we all have families and communities that sometimes, we've got to just take some of them with love and, get that support and connection elsewhere.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's okay. And
Yeah,
then we work on
exactly.
boundaries in coaching. So it's all perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. All the things that we should have learned in school, basically. I
Yes.
feel like that's kind of the thing
I
is
think the
like,
things we were innately born with
yeah.
that were taught out of us, right? Like think about like a toddler. A toddler, if he doesn't like somebody,
Right.
they don't want to be, they're very clear. Like, I don't want to play with him or her or you or,
Yeah.
and then we're told, oh, that's not play. You can't,
Yeah.
you can't respect your own boundaries. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's all part of the healing and learning as adults what, we knew before we
Yeah, right.
forgot. I love that. Well,
Totally.
you've given us already so many amazing tips and places where people could start, but I'm gonna ask because listeners know at the end I always ask, and sometimes they get an additional one, or you're gonna highlight one you've already said. But what is that one step that listeners can take starting today to start to improve?
Yeah. So definitely the mindset is what we talked about before is probably the number one. But to add on to that, I would say give yourself grace, right?
My
I
favorite
think a lot
word.
of us, beat ourselves up over not being perfect. And this journey isn't about being perfect. It's about being consistent, learning, growing, stumbling, getting back up. And if you give yourself grace to do that, it's just it's more joyful. Your journey is just more joyful instead of this kind of cluster of like ups and downs and ups and downs. Like just look at yourself as an even plane, and sometimes you have to walk up and sometimes you have to walk down, and that's just life. And just give yourself grace because it took you decades to get here in the first place. The good news, it's not going to take you decades to reverse it, but it will take
Sometime.
solid few years commitment. Yeah. And
Yeah.
then rearranging your lifestyle and unfortunately, I believe that autoimmune is going to be worse than diabetes in the future. So a lot of people aren't, just know that if you're doing this right now, you're an outlier. You are the frontier of like having this knowledge, and that in one way or another in the future, you are going to be able to help someone else out.
Always. It's the the butterfly effect, the ripple effect is beautiful. I was talking to a former client who's a friend yesterday, and she was sharing about her children and how they eat, and her youngest loves to cook, and he loves to cook healthy food. And when we very first started working together, she was that mom, like, there's no way my family is going to eat this way, right? And now her kids are sharing with their friends, and we always, we don't need to do this for a living to be. I always say that's the joy of, I love watching my clients heal and improve, but knowing that they're going to then pay that forward, and we're impacting families. And my goal, I'm guessing your goal, is generations, right? We want this to be the new normal.
Yeah, 100%. It's yeah, my tagline, I suppose, is helping mothers become the conscious mom they were born to be. Raising that consciousness. Once you get a little bit of information, you want more. And then you see, wow, this is potentially can have a big impact on my future child that's not even here, and my grandchildren, and it's a lot to take on, but it's very, very impactful.
Well, and we're impacting all the future one way or another, right? So we can do it eating Twinkies, or we can do it by really sharing wellness. And so don't get overwhelmed. I want to just touch on your tip of grace. And I think one thing that makes it easier for people, or not easier, but maybe raises awareness, is I always say, well, the grace you extend to everybody else around you, like, you deserve that. That's the grace we're talking about. That's that level. And so, if you're listening and you're like, I don't even know what that means, that's okay. We all are toughest on ourselves, and not only does it make the journey more joyful, but I think actually, shortens healing time and speeds our recovery, and it's the word, and we didn't rehearse this, but we clearly share approaches here.
Yeah.
So amazing. So we all of your links and goodies are going to be in the show notes, but for people that love to listen on the go and maybe aren't great at clicking through, where's the best place to find you if they're like, oh my gosh, I need to know more about Monica?
Yeah. So I'm Finding Fertility everywhere. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and my website, my podcast. So yeah, just pick your guilty pleasure, and I will be there in a very authentic, real way. So get ready, buckle up. And yeah, just yeah, it's like a no holds bar. But it's just like, we're here for a good time, right?
Yeah.
And not a long time. And with fertility, you feel so time poor already. So the sooner you get this information in a direct, loving way, the sooner you're going to be holding your baby, or the sooner you're going to feel like well enough to go play with your children, like I always say to people, how long do you want your journey to be? It's your choice. You get to choose.
Amazing. Monica, thank you so much. You have given us amazing gold today.
Yay! I'm so excited to share and connect. It was great.
Thank you. For everyone listening, remember you can get the show notes and transcripts by visiting inspiredliving.show. I hope you had a great time and enjoyed this episode as much as I did. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity. Did you enjoy this episode? Please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to get a transcript of this and every other episode, just head on over to inspiredliving.show or click on the link in this episode's description. There, you can also find everything we discussed in this episode, including links and information about our guest. You can even send in your questions to be answered by Julie in a future episode. That's inspiredliving.show. Until next time, this is Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, helping you take your power back.